What's up, friends? This is Jazz bringing you a review for the manga Vamp the Lost Soul by James W. Raven. Now, this is my first time reviewing a manga. Really in depth. I've read and went over for better or for worse comics, but this is my first in-depth review. Also, these images here you see I've had permission to use by James himself. Thank you for that. I will use them to the best of my ability. Now, sometimes, as a few of you will know, any new person who hasn't heard this yet, I am on the autistic spectrum, but my processing ability isn't quite great, so bear with my review. It might be all over the place sometimes, but I'll try and to make it in the depth of my ability to make it as worthy as possible for James and any other fans of this series. Now, I don't often read manga. I think up until this point, the only manga I've really read were Pokemon ones. Yeah, okay, I've read some of the Shonen Jump manga occasionally, but not as a whole, not the manga as a whole. And I gotta say, this kept me hooked. I was a little hesitant about it because it's harder for me to get out of my comfort zone. But once I got into it, I really enjoyed it. Now, without spoiling the whole book for you, because you guys should really read it for yourself in order to really enjoy and understand it, it is about a young boy named Nika, who turns out to be part vampire, part nightmare human. It's still a difficult concept to fully understand, and we'll just say that it has a really good backstory of how he came to be. I'm not going to spoil it for you, but we'll just get into the actual review aspects of it. One thing that I really am pleased about is how he mentions differences in this manga. Like, a character has ADHD in it. Nika is suspected to have dyslexia. It hasn't been 100% confirmed yet in this volume whether he does, but it is somewhat pointed out he might. Right? I just love how it's mentioned that way. I fully support things too that brings up and supports special needs of any sort. That is one big thing for me. It's more relatable for me that way. It is really well done. Like, this guy, James, he's started this idea when he was 13. It is amazing. Yes, he's probably quite a bit old. Well, I don't know when he was 13. But to have an idea like that at the age of 13 is amazing. He is very gifted. Now, as I said, I really don't want to spoil the whole book for you, so it's hard to review that way without actually telling you quite a bit. But I guess I'll tell you a little bit about the characters rather than the story. I really like Nika because obviously, I think he's supposed to have two sides to him, in a way. At the beginning, it showed his innocent, naive self, his carefree self. He has love for all his friends, but he can be just as critical and defensive with them, too. And his other half, what he gets after the main climax happens. We'll just say it's really well done, but it's kind of creepy. As I said, I'm not always used to these. Well, I can't call it horror, because that's not really what it's aimed to be. But we'll just say horror doesn't always go well with me. We'll just say this is not something, if you're easily upset, something I wouldn't read before bed. That's for sure. But his development in this, this character's development through the whole volume is great. I mean, he's developed so much from the first page I've read with him in it to the very end of this volume, and that is rare to see so much of the personality, so much of a defined personality in the first volume of a book. I may not read them so much, but in stories in general, characters usually take a long time to really show the personality and develop it. Well, on to one of my other favorite characters, Ranfang. Now, I don't know whether it's just because, okay, I'll spoil this much, that he's a wolf, or what. He is the character that I mentioned earlier that has ADHD, or attention deficit hyperactive disorder, and it explains it in there too. Now, I mean, the character is just kind of what I would expect for someone with that type of nature. The only thing I don't like about that character is that, yes, he has ADHD, but his perverted nature for a 12-year-old. I mean, I have a family member that age with ADHD, and that family member does not show those tendencies. Not that way. But I suppose, it has a Japanese basic in it. So, I've also heard that Japanese people seem to mature quicker in certain aspects. So maybe that is acceptable in that area, in that region or country. I don't know. So I might be talking wrong, but any 12-year-old I know. Okay, yeah, there are some 12-year-olds like that, I suppose, but I don't think I've ever seen one with ADHD that has that nature. But I said that's just on me, I said. And maybe later on, Ranfang will develop past that. Right? He seems to have a very caring nature too. He's very impulsive though, as ADHD would. People with ADHD would. So, I really think for most part, James has put ADHD or nailed it right on the head. So the only thing that he didn't was the perverted nature. That's the only thing I'm a little off about with Ranfang. But everything else really fits how he was characterized. I mean, there's so much I would like to say, but I do not want to spoil the story for those who did not read it. We'll just say that he is one of my favorite characters. He's funny, short-tempered, and honestly, I don't know why that appeals to me. I do not know at all, but we'll just say maybe it reminds me a little bit of people I know. Except for the perverted nature again. That is totally not who I'm talking about, who I know. Another one of my favorites, yes, I know there's only 4 actual main characters that are focused on. Actually, no, 3 really, because the 4th isn't really quite focused on in this volume as much. I also really like Jess, Nika's good friend, and one of the main group. She is part vampire, part human, similar to Nika. And she just has this short temper, worse than Ranfang. I mean, I think Ranfang's more impulsive than short-tempered. Jess, I'm not judging females at all. Females can have I know females that have short tempers, or can be very tough. So, I'm not judging. But, literally, I swear, if it wasn't for Nika's powers he gets later, I think Jess would be the main lead of the group. But even without all that power, she knows how to fight, and she is very intelligent about what moves she does and how she fights. I think her only drawback is her short temper. If she had a way to mellow it out, I think she'd be a very good combatant against any enemy. What drew me to her was, I really don't want to spoil the story, but I will tell you this much. I guess Nika made a promise to Jess to never cry again. The day they made friends when they were like 5, 6 years old. But one of the bad guys made Nika break that promise to Jess. And Jess just whooped his ass. Or tried to. I wish that was the case, but she was going to pummel him. Like, she literally just... She has strong willpower to her. She's... something a lot of girls would want to be. I mean... It's hard to explain. The fourth main character mentioned that is Kaz. Now, she is the character that probably gets the least page time, or least development. Kaz, I will say, is only really shown with any real dialogue in the first few pages. Well, not first few, within the first 30 pages of it. She's seen talking to the group, and a character bio is mentioned about her, which says she's mutant. So that's her species. And that's really one of the only things we know about her as of yet. We know her name, we know she's a mutant, we know she could be a bit carefree, you know what I mean, she's more balanced than Jess in her temperament. But really, that's about it. Rangbang, Jess, and Nika is probably the only 3 of the good guys that are really given any real attention. Now, there are more characters I would like to talk about that aren't necessarily, you know, the good guys. And I somewhat forget his name, but I think it's Jeniko or something. That's something I'm gonna have to check. Okay. It's Jimmy No. Now, I know about him, but sometimes those names are hard to remember. He is... Well, I wouldn't say I have mixed feelings on this character. Personally, I went back and forth whether he's just a generic villain or is he genius. Now, he's a bit of both. He has the traits of the generic villain, but he also has this side to him that he thinks he's doing all for good, in a way. He always brings up references to the Bible and heaven and the Holy Spirit, somewhat. So I really think he, in his demented way, thinks he's good, where Nika is evil. And that is very unique. I mean, it has been done before, but not very often in book form. I mean, to be fair, I'm not much of a reader, but, like, a lot of the generic villains show they're bad. They know they're bad. Where, I think Jiminico, I apologize for butchering the name. I think his mind is set that, oh, he's doing this all for good. But he does not fully, he thinks he's God, and obviously that is part of his character. He literally thinks he's God. Well, yeah, God wouldn't go destroying all human beings. I mean, there have been terrible people in the world, and God hasn't, shot a lightning bolt or something down and boom, but besides the point, he's an interesting character, and you'll read this in the manga if you own this, but apparently at one point, Janiko and Nika were reversed roles. Janiko was supposed to be the good guy, and Nika was supposed to be the villain. But things have changed around where it made them who they are today. And it would be so awkward seeing Nika as the villain after reading that. James made a really good choice doing it the way he did. But it's also interesting that he made some of Janiko's intent, his thoughts the way he made, like, I think it's interesting the way he made him. He made him a villain, but he made him the villain thinking he was doing some good. Right? Making him with the mindset that the ones he's facing are evil. And that is still rare to see. I mean, without spoiling it, Yumiko has done some really dastardly things. We'll just say, Nika has had 2 sets of parents his whole life, and Junino has killed both sets, leaving Nika basically an orphan. I mean, killing is bad on its own, but killing 2 sets of parents of the same person. He has to hate Nika a lot to do that. Now, another thing I really like is I see a name in this book that reminds me of a book I like. And yes, some of you may kill me for saying this, but Twilight. I was a Twilight fan. Yes, I don't read much, but when I was in 18 to 20, I was a big Twilight fan. And the name Jasper. Ironically, that's my favorite character in Twilight. Now, are you asking me if I think he stole the name? Hell no. When you think about it, he started this idea when he was 13, which had to be at least 12 or more years ago. Now, Stephenie Meyer started Twilight in like 2004? Oh, that was about that long. But it wasn't published for a couple years after that. So I really think that he didn't know about the name Jasper. I don't think he stole it. But I generally just say I love that name. And the character Jasper, very mysterious. Jasper is Jess's father. He always has his face except for his eyes covered. Just makes him more mysterious. He barely speaks. Like, if he speaks, it's through another person. Like, one of the minor main characters, James, the anti-hero, is seen talking to Jasper through the phone. But he responds to what he said. He's never actually spoke block dialogue or word dialogue. But the only thing that's known about Jasper is that he was extremely protective of Jess. That he didn't want her to fight. And I also know that he is also part of this superhero group with powerful beings that I think protect the area where they are. Now, I believe it's based on Heaven Dream. What is it? It says there in the book it's Heaven. Okay, yeah, Heaven, Hell, Dream, and Nightmare. So those are the 4 realms in this book, and I believe that Jasper and a small group of other people in there protect, that. And Nika is both the child of Mira, the Nightmare Queen, and Jinko, the famous vampire. Now, that makes, now that his first parents are gone, that makes Nika the Nightmare King, in a sense of the word. Now, the dialogue is hard to describe. Sometimes it's better reading than, trying to explain. But he put a lot of depth into the story. He has serious talent. I try sitting down writing a story, I get 2-3 lines, and then I get writer's block. He spent so much time in making this series, that I think this will go a long way. The idea, though some of the things in there are similar to other things I've seen or watched, the idea is still very new. And is rarely done. The comedy is on par with my taste. I mean, obviously this may not appeal to really, like, I would say it wouldn't appeal to 40 and up, but even 30, someone in the 30s would enjoy this. This has enough adult humor, enough humor for teenage audiences. I mean, obviously I would not allow children to read this. I mean, it has enough of the F word for any parent to be drawn away from showing their kid it. But, all in all, this manga is brilliant. It keeps you hooked. It's very descriptive and imaginative. I literally finished this whole book in a day, which for me that's a record. I literally read this in 3-4 hours tops. So I kept my mind right onto it. Once I know the saying, once you start, you cannot stop. This is this book for me. Now, I apologize if this review isn't as descriptive as you may like, but there are plenty of other people who can give you a real good in-depth description and review of this. I obviously did not want to spoil this whole manga for you as well, so there were parts that I have left out for that reason. I just really recommend that you get this, check it out if at all possible. Then you will get everything I am saying to you. Now, that was my review of Vamp the Lost Soul. James E. Raven, or W. Raven, keep this going. I don't know if you have any idea what you've created. People will really love this. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!